whereas, you know, we're sort of like, we're watching a colour. I remember seeing the moon landings, and I think I even turned around to my dad and I said, why is it, you know, not in colour? You know, whereas, you know, we're sort of like, we're watching a colour TV, and you think they've had like movies out from, you know, Gone with the Wind, like was done in colour. So
That was to cover up the mistakes, wasn't it?
well, of course it was, because what you got to remember, it was like all second generation. You actually, NASA controlled everything. They controlled all the sort of like TV, the sound, everything. And what you actually had guys in there, say from CBS, Fox, or whatever, ITV, all just sort of like with their cameras pointed at another TV screen. So by the time you got it in your sort of like living room, it was pretty abysmal, to be honest with you, which was obviously designed that way to make it not make people suspicious about what was actually going on. But I want to go back. I want to go back a couple of years from that anyway, because in 1967 there was three guys that was really meant to be the first people on the moon. That was Gus Grissom, Roger Chaffee, and Ed White. Now, he was like, Gus Grissom, he was like the real bloke that everyone looked up to. He was like the top astronaut. He was like the Justin Bieber,
number one.
The astronaut, yeah, the astronaut world. And but also, he was one of NASA's greatest critics. And one famous thing he done, he actually put a lemon outside like the lunar lander. And of course, you can just imagine now, like in the Pentagon, sort of like all these generals sitting around and seeing this
with a
guy
lemon.
Who's such a vocal critic, Karen. I mean, literally, he was actually meant to be doing the day after he actually died in the capsule fire. He was meant to be doing sort of like this interview where he was sort of like going to slate how bad it actually was. You know, the whole sort of like Apollo program could have been scrapped because it was in complete disarray.
What, you think they had to get rid of him then?
To make an example of him. But the thing is, what they did, rather than just sort of like make an example of him, they thought if they'd done Roger and Ed as well, they say, oh, it was just a fire. But I mean, you know, it's pretty clear to most people that sort of like it was done on purpose. Because what you got to remember, if this guy was such a vocal critic, they was going to have to sort of like say to him, well, actually, we can't go to the moon anyway. We've got to fake it. How can you do that with a guy that was such a critic in the first place? You with me?
Yeah.
It couldn't possibly happen. And of course, you know, once those poor guys were taken out, then you got the Three Stooges coming, Moe, Larry, and Curly. No, not really. Armstrong, Collins, and Aldrin were the yes men that were brought in afterwards. So not everyone knows this story. They were brought in afterwards, and obviously they had to be wised up about what was actually the real thing that was going to happen, which is basically sort of like faking it from start to finish.
Right, so this other guy was going to tell the truth, but he got snuffed out before he could tell the truth.
Well, yeah. There's no doubt. I mean, you know, there's been programs about this because you know, this guy was actually thinking he could go to the moon. I suppose in those days, you know, everyone thought we could go to the moon. They've been sort of like doing all these different programs like Gemini before, but even when it happened, there was people that sort of like smelt a rat. I remember like one of my friend's dads, he turned around and said, that's not on the blinking moon, that's in the studio. And he's just an ordinary working guy. But then you had other people, yeah. But then you had other people at the time that sort of like see through it straight away. I mean, one of the first conspiracy theorists was a guy called Bill Casing, and he used to work for a company called Rocketdyne, and in the early 60s. And when you see sort of like the supposed moon landing, straight away he could smell a rat for the simple reason he couldn't see any blast crater underneath the lunar lander for a start, and then there was no dirt on sort of like the landing pads. There was just too much. There was too many things.
So people were talking about it then. I had this big feeling because they only show us the news the way they want to show it to us now, and it's all done differently. And I'm thinking all those people, they were probably going, "What is it? I want to know."
Exactly. Well, I mean, Bill Casing, he actually wrote a book like, you know, we never went to the moon in about 1974, and of course, a lot of people thought, oh, this bloke is just sort of like some kind of nutcase or whatever. And he even said himself, you know, I don't care if people call me a cuckoo or anything. You know, I know what I know. I know we didn't sort of like go to the moon. And I mean, another one that was there, another conspiracy theorist at the time was a guy called Ralph Renee. Now, this guy is where I get some of my experiments from. He was the first guy that realised that it would be not impossible, but very hard to use like a glove in a vacuum or a space suit, because what happens is you've got unequal pressure in the vacuum, and the suit would just sort of like swell up like the Michelin Man, and you see them do all these little sort of like things like playing golf and.
You said it would. You told me the other day when we were talking about this that it would have gone really stiff.
It would go really stiff, and you'd lose the dexterity of the glove. Basically, doing things what you see, you know, these guys do on the International Space Station and whatever is. But it's not like we see. It's impossible. You know, they couldn't. They lose their dexterity because I mean, there's actually a video of here on Earth where they sort of like they've got an oil tanker. I don't know if you've seen it, and they sort of like make a complete vacuum out of this oil tank. This is how we live in a pressurised system, and once all the air was evacuated out of this oil tanker, it collapsed. Now you're talking about like sheet metal, you know.
Mm.
So you can imagine, just imagine, can't you? Sort of like the stupid little suits that sort of like they wore, and even Ralph Renee. He turned around and said to NASA, he said, right, he goes, if these suits are so good and they're meant to sort of like keep off the cosmic rays and all the radiation and whatever, I wanted to suit up a couple of guys and send them to 3 Mile Island. You know, I'm taking a long shot here. This is just my own opinion. I'm wondering, you know, everything you see on the TV like is all predictive programming, and that little video we see the other day like with all this sort of like nanotechnology, is it already out there? Is it? We just don't know. I mean, you know, evacuated chamber, and you.
Yeah, I think I got one as another one on Sun and Moon. It was Donald. He had his own. He was making his own aeroplane, and he did the same thing.
Oh right, yeah. Well, I mean, you know, you can see that you lose total dexterity with it. You know, you can't move about. And what you got to remember, if they've got a complete suit on as well, that whole suit is going to be the same. It's absolutely ludicrous, and it's meant to be pressurised as well. That suit is pressurised, so, and of course this completely nullifies the Tesla car in space, which we know is absolute rubbish anyway. But you know, the tyres would have absolutely blown up. You know, it's almost laughable. It's like I told you the other day. I actually consider sort of like NASA Disney for adults. You know.
Yeah. Also, I said to you, didn't I, that adults romanticise it.
Yeah, and
look
the
at
thing
the
is,
rocket, children, look.
Some people just don't want to see it. I mean, it's like they just go along with it, even if they know that it's sort of like fake. It's like, I suppose, an outlet for them or something. But for people like us, we think it's wrong because there's 50+ million a day going to it. So what is it going to? It's not even going to the CGI.
It's going to the fake news, the fake everything else.
Where all the money's going. I mean, I've got.
I just think all along, all they're doing, whatever they do, is they're just taking money from the people.
That's all they're doing. So you know, even if it's just lying in the bank or something.
You imagine we just had an impeachment, same thing. All that money's coming out of the people's purse.
It's just awful. You know, it's just. It's like an old magician's trick. Usually, the simplest answer is the right answer. So when you see sort of like the 3 astronauts going up the tower and get into the rocket, they don't just get in there at all. I don't think. I think they stay there. The rocket takes off, goes in an arc because we know it can't go up anyway.
Yeah, they just put a film on, don't they, of something they filmed before. So you get to the door, they scoot out the way, then they play a film of them going in there.
Exactly, and of course, it's all done in the studio. And I mean, I actually think that the first one was done, the first moon landing was done. This is only my own personal opinion. In Elstree in Boreham Wood, and I'll tell you why I think so. I used to live around that area, And I actually met a guy that was working in the studio about that time, and he was telling me he seems to think that sort of like they use some of the sets from 2001: A Space Odyssey, which makes perfect sense because they do this. I mean, when they made Carry On Cleo, it was because like the Cleopatra was sort of like was made with Richard Burton and Elizabeth Taylor, and they just used their set. So it makes perfect sense. They would do exactly the same thing with the moon landings. But then I think it was all shipped over to America and done. Now another thing as well. I mean, when my Uncle Tony told me about the the desert being used for the moon landings, as when we was going through Nevada, and that is the same place where Area 51 is. Now, could it be that Area 51 is where sort of like all the moon landing sets are? And of course, if it was, obviously this is why you can't go anywhere near that place.
I've got to pretend that it's aliens and everything, but really it's because it's harbouring the moon surface.
Exactly. Now I've seen Google shots of that area, and it looks like very much like a lunar landscape. So I'm wondering whether it's to throw people off, saying they've got crashed alien saucers there and one thing and another, which now we know is complete bunkum. Because my own personal opinion is this might be the only place there is where we're living. This is it. And some people get a claustrophobic feeling with that. Sort of like in the paper, there's been some guys that have turned around and said, they put the money up front, but then again, can you believe it? Because it's the media again, isn't it?
I know, and the media seem to be the backbone of it all, because they're the platform it all comes through, and so, but they're the ones filming it.
Well, exactly. I mean, it's like that video we see the other night. They're actually telling you. They're telling you in 1968 what they're actually doing, and it's only sort of like in the last few years that we've all worked out this is actually what's happening. But I've still got some mates that believe the news. It's just incredible. They'll say to me, "Oh, Gaz, this happened or that happened." And what I was saying the other night, Karen, when I was speaking to you on the phone when I was in the pub, I was looking around at all these people, and you can just see they're just so much into the system. Their cognitive dissonance and everything else is just like the indoctrination is off the scale, and you feel it's not always a good thing what we're doing, because I'm a very sociable person and I like speaking to people, but it's like you're talking to people that are completely on a different wavelength than you.
Yeah, and then you realise you've got nothing in common with them because you can't talk to them.
It's very, very difficult. It really is, and then there you go. But I mean, everything is so wrong, right? I mean, I'll give you a little example. We just recently had an election, haven't we?
Yeah.
Well, one of my mates, Colin, is a highly decorated guy in the military, and I see him lovely fella. I see him in a pub, and he said to me, "All right, Gaz," he said, "who'd you vote for?" And I said, "Well, nobody, Colin." I said, "Because they're all working for the same people at the top of the tree." He said to me, he goes, "But Gal, do you realise people have died for you, and in wars and conflicts?" And I said to him, "Well, do you want to see the?" "Oh, it's a sticky subject for me. I don't really want to speak about it because it is my mate. How can I turn around to him and say that probably some of the conflicts he's been in have probably been scripted, if not all scripted, or at least a sort of like the fuse been set for sort of like it to carry on, like the two Gulf Wars that we had, known to man, it's like it's got everything." And I was in the other room, like my sister was laid up in the other room next door, and I was watching all these channels like with NASA Unexplained Files and all of that, and I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, there was a time when I actually believed this stuff, and now it does look like a comedy show. And I think you're right. I think as we've sort of like evolved in this movement, we can see it so clearly now, whereas before we couldn't. We just couldn't see it.
Yeah, like I used to have to look at it, and then like for people, I'm slowing the footage down to show them, but I don't have to slow it down now. I can just see it. It's like getting another pair of eyes, isn't it? It's like another eyesight you get.
It's like we've got sort of like X-ray vision now. I mean, apparently, like in Australia, when they were getting like the live feed from the moon, there was a Coke bottle or something like on the ground, and a load of people sort of like phoned up and said like, and said there's a Coke bottle, and then they sort of like cut it, and then they sort of like changed it.
Whoa.
But you know, I've actually heard a woman that sort of like actually see it. You know, phoned up that she's still alive today, I believe. She's probably about in her 70s or 80s, and she phoned up and said, "I just see a Coke bottle."
Oh my goodness.
And listen, Karen.
Oh, but that could have been some programming they were putting in there. They wanted you to see the Coke bottle because it was subliminal messaging.
Maybe that's what it was. I mean, there's so many things. What about the lunar rover? My mate turned around and said to me, he picks up on things. He said, "Gal, I can't work out how they got that lunar rover there. It was just on the ground, wasn't it? And there was no wheel tracks. But how's it going to fit into the lunar lander? Now, why didn't we think about that at the time? Because
it's the size of a Jeep. It is a Jeep.
It's funny you say that, because a guy has worked out that the chassis of it is a Willys Jeep. Now that thing costs like millions, and it's actually a Willys Jeep. Like, that's all it is. You know, a Willys Jeep with sort of like electric motor on it. It's just laughable. Now, you know, we can see it so clearly now, can't we?
Also, not just that, you know, in those days as well, they sped up the footage, but all you need to do is slow it down, and then they walk around, and after that it was like they're bouncing around, and that's one of the other things they did.
You can see it straight away. I mean, it's like the lunar lander light was just pulled up on strings, and you actually see, I don't know if you notice, you can actually see sort of like the strings sometimes, or the wires on the astronauts' backs. And when they fall down, like they're getting pulled up. And I mean, you know, Bart Sabrell has done just magnificent work. I mean, his work has been outstanding. You know, and funny thing, what happened on the way to the moon for me, just if anyone watches that and still believes in the moon landings, well, I can't help you. You know, you're on your own.
So the moon is your pet subject then, when you go to Hyde Park.
Really, it's like I knew it instantly. I mean, how you can not see it? I mean, I do understand physics quite well, you know, so I thought, oh God, how stupid have I been?
Some of the things that they're in there are just so stupid. You know, it's all it's all fixed.
Well, just water, sort of like, you know, sticking to a ball upside down. It's like, now, you know, I think to myself, what a donut I was. What an idiot. But we all went through it, you know. I think another thing as well, if you've got busy lives, you just not thinking about it, are you? You know, you're just going along, and then you see it, and then you think to yourself, my God, I can't believe it.
I know, and then you turn around and you think, are they going to believe it? Are they going to believe it? Are they going to? Nobody believes it. No one understands. Why don't they understand?
But you know something, what we were saying the other day, Karen, we was having a chat on the phone. Is it some people really can't see it? It's like, I know it sounds strange to us, they're on a different frequency. They're on vibrating, they're on a different frequency, and they really can't see it.
I don't know what it is, whether it's just because we've opened our souls up. I don't know whether we're indigo children. I just don't know what it is. I can tell that you're very into the moon bit.
Well, that is my forte. I think there's not many people out there that have got the knowledge of me with the moon, because obviously, like of my age, you know, being nearly 60 now, I've got the new improved version coming out. I'm getting like a little electric light pump that I think is going to evacuate the chamber even better. You know, it make the glove as stiff as a ball then. And I mean, it's nowhere near the tour you've got in so-called vacuum of outer space. It's absolutely.
So basically, an astronaut just wouldn't be able to move at all, would they? They'd be, I can't move, I'm stiff.
They'd be like Stretch Armstrong, like that sort of like picture I sent you, like of the Michelin Man. But of course, another thing as well, you know we've got some kind of solid separation. You can't just have like a vacuum living next to a gas pressure. It's impossible. It doesn't. Yeah. It doesn't work anywhere. It doesn't work anywhere in physics in the world. Why should it work? They say, oh, the atmosphere gets thinner and thinner and thinner as you go up. It does, and this is another thing as well. This is why rockets can't work in space. I told you, it's like rockets can't work in a vacuum. They need something to push it. It needs something to push against. It needs the atmosphere to push against. It needs air. You know, it pushes the ground, and that is why they're going on arc, because they can only go so high. Because as the oxygen atmosphere and whatever is getting so thin, they'd end up just conking out and falling down anyway.
Yeah, and you've only got to look at the pictures of time lapse of the rockets going up. You can see they go up and go down.
Absolutely ridiculous. absolutely ridiculous. And like, you know, the old shuttle disaster, like they found 6 of the people still alive, aren't they? Apparently.
Yes, yes. Oh, it's just it's
They
ridiculous.
caught one.
We're living
They
in
caught one
we're
the other
living in
day.
duality, as Michael would say. Duality.
We are. We are. We're living in a duality, you know. And we all sort of like we're all sort of like little sprogs on a gigantic big sprocket kind of thing, and we're all doing our little bit, and that's all we can do. And hopefully, you know, we can sort of like get all of our collective consciousness
Yeah,
together.
because this whole thing, you know, we've got all the you know, in England now we've got all these immigrants coming, but they would always be coming because we were the immigrants once. We're all immigrants.
Exactly. Like I said, I mean, you know, part of me is from Belgium, like, and I
Yeah.
can't speak a bloody word of it. I can't speak a word of Welsh. I can't speak a word of Brussels. Like, all I speak was a horrible Cockney dialect.
Well, the Welsh people obviously were there, so obviously because I'm half Welsh.
Yeah.
So that's So that I wouldn't have said my mum thought that she was part of something else. She just said she's Welsh. So
that's a good point. It's a very good point what you said, though. Really. There's not many people that are actually, you know, from here, are they? We're from all over the place.
Yes.
We're the same. You know, this is why when I hear some of my mates, like, you know, say, "Oh, there's too many Poles around here."
Yeah. Say, look up your history. What bloodline have you got in you?
Yeah, and you know what they're not doing no harm. We're all human beings. We're all here sharing this realm together. Like, we should all just get on together rather than fighting.
We're all one, Gary. We're all one.
Just fighting for those psychopaths sitting around a table that couldn't fight their way out of a crisp packet. You know, that's all that's happening. We're all one. We're all brothers and sisters. We should all just get on. That's my opinion.
Oh, lovely, Gary. Gary, thank you so much for this hangout. Thank you so much for explaining much more about NASA and stuff like that. And
well, I mean, you know, I'd like to do it again, so I've got much more, you know, much more.
Yeah, 10 till we do it again. But for this hangout, should we just end this hangout and we'll talk afterwards? So,
okay,
Gary, and chat room, thank you so much.
Yeah.